I feel like I need to defend my scene's honor here, because this is just turning into a bit of a dog battle.
Like in groups always look.
I'm cutting you off here. I'm cutting you off. Cutting you off. He said G2's winning it. He said G2's winning it.
We need to wait till the next EU tournament, which could be in about 10 years now.
Take it with like a grain of salt.
No,
but
that's
that
no
being
fun.
said,
Take it super literally.
Spike defuse.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Press 4 to Defuse, your weekly source of Valorant esports news. I'm Darth Mike, joined as always by Sam and Ryan. I say as always, Ryan, you weren't here last week. We replaced you with Vance.
No.
How you doing?
And
this
I
week?
could have been. Stuff. Basically, the glitch pop video that went out on Monday, we were meant to record on Wednesday, but it got moved to Friday because one of them was sick. So that's why. And so I was just sat watching the show anyway, kind of like the Squidward SpongeBob meme, just from the outside looking in.
I've done that before when I've had to miss an episode, and I'm just like, miss you guys. It sucks, but you know, as long as we always get to come back, that's the important part.
Yeah, we haven't changed the locks yet. Yet. You never know when we're gonna do
Ooh, winky face.
No,
Oh, that's the wrong game. Sorry. Whoops. Overwatch doesn't exist. Overwatch doesn't.
I mean, it doesn't seem like it's gonna exist for long. Now they're just selling teams by the wholesale over to China.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Overwatch 2, Electric Boogaloo.
It will come out
I love the
eventually.
Chinese team, Los Angeles Valiant.
Yeah.
Great.
Yes, very on point branding right there. All right, we're gonna talk about Valorant, the thing that we're actually here to talk about. Let's get into it. We do have a lot of things to talk about. There's not so much in the pre-section where we cover what happened in the last week, but we're going to talk about it anyways. This is our run it back section. We're going to talk about some of the things that are going on. And yes, Nightmare, we will interact with chat if you got something for us. First thing to announce, Alliance. We know this roster's been in the works for a while. They had picked up Furoth. Now they've announced the whole roster. We've got Banks as the GM. It's Furoth, Lucker, Cadavra, Hype, and Creason. And then Mitch. Creon?
See, I read that as
Gets me.
Creaton. Alright, cool.
Creon. And then we've got Mitch Man
Hey.
as an analyst. All right. What are we making? We knew this one was sort of in the works for a while. What do we make of this one? Ryan, you want to start us out?
Yeah, I mean, you've got the ex-Ninjas in Pajamas players of Fearoff and Looker. Looker, I'm super happy to see, considering I felt that he was hard done by on NIP. He was playing a jet up role for them, but he's more of like a supporting player. He played a lot of Sage way back when, and looked really good when he played Sky and Silver as well. You've also got like Creon in there, Hip, both Lithuanian players that have been involved in various teams. It's Cadavra that's a question mark. I don't think he's ever played for a team before, so I guess the hope is to find, and you know, Banks has been pretty honest about this, finding talent that people just don't really put in the time to look for. There were open tryouts and stuff, and this is the 5 teams, players that they came in for. It's hard to say whether they're going to be super strong in the region, mostly because Europe looks so competitive right now, but you can safely assume that this is looking to be a tier 2 team, and with any luck, Alliance stick to it in the future and build up for that. But it isn't going to just immediately set the ground on fire.
Sam, thoughts?
I pretty much echo that almost to the T. Cadavra, I saw he played on Warthawks back in First Strike at some point or another in one of the qualifiers. But again, that was like the only reason I recognized the name is because you do that thing where you like troll through the bracket, all 6 billion teams of it, and you kind of spot out team names, and every now and then it'll pop up on social media. And so like a random team name will stick out in your head, not because they've done anything, but because you've just kind of seen it once or twice. So that's where I know that team from. But I do remember that Alliance did kind of open tryouts, which I also liked. It wasn't a case of, oh, we've seen this person perform, we're immediately going to invite them around. They actually did this properly, or at least what I consider to be proper. You do your open tryouts, you see how the people react with one another, you see how they perform in a somewhat pressured environment, because obviously you need to perform in order to show that you're worth your metal or whatever. So I like the way that they did that. I think the Mitch Man thing, like Mitch and Banks, the casting duo, now the Alliance duo, I really think that's funny, but also good, because Mitch, I've always loved watching him on the desk, whether he's like on the desk or casting, because he's always like, he's got his tablet and he's like rattling off stats left and right, headshot kills and first bloods and plants and diffusers. He's got all of that information. He analyzes the game. I remember even in First Strike, he wasn't casting, but he was on the desk and he would break down plays and he would give you all of that extra in-depth information. So, I mean, people look at casters and think, oh, they're just there for fluff and entertainment. But, like, Mitch knows his stuff, and I think that he's going to be a really good asset to the team.
He's a smart cookie, that Mitch, man. I've gotten the pleasure to cast with him, not recently, but back in Counter-Strike, we worked together a reasonable amount in the MDL League and the like. And he's a smart cookie, and he's a hard worker. I am curious to see how he'll adapt to the analyst role. And the funny thing as well is, it's kind of an interesting marriage with Mitch and Banks, because they're still doing a lot of talent work, and they still seem to be sort of in the primary docket of talent work. So it's kind of funny if they're also running a team and then doing the talent work for those events. I mean, we're going to have some biased casters, and there's just no way you can't do that. We've had it before. In Counter-Strike, we've had, like, Natu, who was involved in the ENSA ownership and still working as talent, but it's a little bit weird.
I mean, you say that. We had G2 Lothar, wasn't it, for
true.
First Strike? We had
But he's not
Yinsu.
running the team.
For sure, but it's still... And then there was Yinsu, who's very involved with Summon. And this is actually something that came up recently in conversation. And, of course, Mitch is doing VCT, so obviously he's involved with Alliance. So it's something that's cropped up. And... like a common comment I saw was, well, professionals won't let their bias show. And I'm like, nah, that's not how unconscious bias works. It's unconscious for a reason. I don't see it as a massive issue, but if it's going to get to the point where, like, you have 6 talent and all 6 of them are affiliated to one team or another, it's going to get a bit silly.
I think the
I
trick...
don't think it's going to work long term either, if they want to franchise and stuff. Like, I think usually people move wholesale, right? Henry G didn't cast and run Cloud9 at the same time in Counter-Strike. It's typically one or the other. So I do feel that for these guys, something has to give down the line. I think that it's a little bit of having your cake and eating it with casting and also being involved in a team like this. But obviously, I don't know the logistics. I just think that this long-term is going to run into some problems sooner rather than later, right? There's going to be something that trips this up. Otherwise, everybody would be doing this.
I think as a talent, the trick is when you know there's going to be a bias involved, just acknowledge it and run into it. Instead of pretending that you're not biased towards the team that you run, just put on the jersey, throw on a flag, lean into it and be the mega fan and play that role on the cast to make it interesting. Because everybody knows you're going to be biased to a team that you created, so just lean into it. It's what you got to do. All right, we're going to move on to the next one before I just move into roasting Mitch. Because that is always my temptation. We're gonna talk about Fnatic. Thankfully, they announced right before we went live. We were waiting on this one. We all kind of knew what it was gonna be, but none of us had it confirmed. Fnatic have announced their signing, their entry in towards Valorant. It is the Summon FC lineup. Boaster, Doma, Mystic, Mo, Sack. What do we think of this?
This is unsurprising. This is entirely expected, and yeah, after such a fantastic performance in First Strike, like if Fnatic didn't pick up Summon, I'd be really confused.
So Ryan, you've been beating the drum. You've been basically wearing a banner. I'm surprised you don't have Summon to Fnatic tattooed on your forehead at this point. You've been calling this for months now. Do you feel vindicated?
I guess, but I also credit to people like Yinsu, the actual team, Mandeep, Halo didn't have a sniff of it. Nell didn't know that this was coming. It was expected, don't get me wrong. I think most people knew it was coming, but nobody knew for sure. And considering all of the stuff that was leaked with roster moves, like, for example, Vitality, we're just like, come on, get it over the line already. We know it's you. But genuinely, yesterday, with Fnatic saying we're announcing the roster, I think there were quite a few people that were like, is it actually Summon? Because I assume it is, but what if it isn't? What if it's monkey business, for Christ's sake? Just imagine. But like, it's nice to get it over the line and just in time for Valorant Champions Tour, because I said to Boaster and Yinsu as well, being unsigned is going to loom over teams going into a tournament like this, especially if there's a moderate amount of expectations for you going forward. So making sure that you have the sustainability, you're signed up with Fnatic for the future, you actually get people to help you out, manage you. You've got your coach already with Mini, but having Yinsu not have to do the social media for the team as well, it's a big help. It's a big weight off their shoulders. And now we should see a fully realized Summon, but I still want to know what it means. And I know that it's naughty, so I'm very excited to find out what SUMN stands for.
So is that's what we're going to find out now? We get to find out what it actually stood for this whole time?
Yes, they said when they get signed, they're gonna reveal what Summon stands for.
Do you have any guesses?
Nothing that I can say on
many at the time.
broadcasts.
Okay. Did you see the fact that Bosta had teased this? His last 6 tweets, 6. Wait, I'm gonna count now. 6. We're going with 6. For before had the first letter of each tweet spelled out Fnatic.
Oh, really?
You go down his Twitter timeline. Yeah, it's pretty great. Enjoyed it. The tease was there. I'm surprised no one caught him on that one. I feel like people have been like combing through their social media to figure out where they're going for ages now. Surprised you didn't have that one, Ryan. I think you just have a wall somewhere with clippings up that are like, where does Summon wind up?
The meme.
It was interesting, right? Because like I think it's a really good fit for Fnatic as well, because not only is Summon being represented by one of the best EU orgs in the business, certainly when you're looking at League, right, and other Riot stuff, Fnatic are a UK team, and they have a UK team here, right? So yeah, we're stuck in COVID, we can't do stuff, but actually representing a majority UK based team is super useful for them going forward. So I think it's a really good fit between both of them. I don't necessarily think that they're going to be pushing to the top of Europe as like a top 3 team, considering you've got FPX, G2, Heretics, and all that kind of stuff, but this is a really good look for this team going forward, and both parties should be really happy with how this has gone.
All right, Sam, parting thoughts on this one?
You say that, didn't they just come second in First Strike? I mean,
yeah,
correct me if I'm wrong.
but Heretics
FTX
came first,
there.
and I'm rating Heretics a lot lower than some of these other teams, right? So we could talk about that some other time.
First Strike was 2 months ago. It's old news. Didn't happen. We'll find out. We're in Champions Tour now. We're in Champions Tour.
Whole new ball game.
We're gonna hop across the pond here. Enough talking about Europe. Europe. Who cares about Europe? No, we're gonna be back to Europe in a second. But first, we're gonna talk about some of the moves that happened over in NA, and there's only really 2 of them to talk about right now. Renegades are making a change. They let go of Bergie, or as I affectionately know him, Thug Waffle. He is out of the roster. His in-game tag used to be Thug Waffle. And then at a certain point, he realized that was not a good way to brand himself, because it was mostly just a joke with a friend that then became his competitive tag. So he swapped over to Bergie, but he'll always be Thug Waffle in my heart. He's out of the team. They're making some changes. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's been much needed. Renegades has been not impressive for a long time now.
Lackluster.
Any thoughts on this one, Sam? Take it. Go with it.
That's about it. I mean, they have been, the word I said, lackluster, for a long time. They were one of those teams that showed potential about 7-8 months ago, and then have just been on like a steady decline ever since. Even now in the VCT, they just got slapped around. I think they got slapped out in like the 2nd round or something. They beat Spot Up, and then they got smacked up by Genji, who were not looking terribly great themselves up until VCT. I mean, okay, we're going to get to that, but they definitely took a step up for a second. But anyway, so Renegades themselves have not been looking great, and we've actually been saying for a long time, like, when are changes coming? When are they going to do something? And now with VCT having already begun, I remember we lauded teams for saying, yes, good job, you made changes just before the VCT, let's see how that goes for you. Now we've got Renegades who've come through the open qualifiers like, guys, we should change something. Come on, guys. Hopefully they can get together. But I don't know. This was definitely necessary.
Do we have any obvious candidates to take this spot to replace him, Ryan? You have any thoughts on that one?
So it'd be a Sova, right, that he typically plays. Ooh, it's hard to say with Minrakuns going various directions. Who is it that BCJ replaced on Xset?
That BCJ replaced on Xset? He replaced... Oh, you put me on the spot there.
Sorry. I think him, because they were both Sova players, and I actually don't think the performance from... Brando. I don't think Brando was that bad, and maybe... I don't know if he was in the IGL as well. I'm not quite sure who's IGLing for this team, but you also need to bear in mind that they don't have a coach anymore, as far as I know, with Coach J going on to pastures new, like at the start of this year, right? So I do think that this was a long time coming. You have to look at one result, I think, in that Cloud9 White game stands out like a sore thumb, not only because they lost to Cloud9 White in pretty dominant fashion, it was like 13-5, I think, but he got 4 frags through that whole map. Like, that's just not good enough. I think Sova players, if you're not showing up, it stands out even more because it's such an integral role to a team. So really, it does seem like a part for part switch up on improving the roster, and kind of expected, I suppose, judging off previous form.
For my money, if I were they, I'd be looking at some of the guys who are on Never Done right now, and seeing if I could pick one of them up. They've been playing. They've won some open events. Obviously, they haven't really done anything substantial yet, but these guys have history in Counter-Strike. We've got names like Vanity on that roster, Dazzle, Zelsis. There's some talent there. So if they were gonna do something, that's where my eyes would be drawn. But I am curious to see what they do in terms of bringing someone in. It's so late. It's so late.
Oh god.
I mean, they're already out of this first one, but you're gonna have no time to get ready for the next run of qualifiers. It's gonna put them in a really tough spot for this run of the Champions Tour. Speaking of figuring yourselves out of spots in the Champions Tour, we've got another change going over in NA. This one I am so excited about. So excited about. It's MCE. Oh yeah, MCE is the new coach of Gen G Valorant. Matthew C. Elmore. I'm such a fan of this guy. I'm just going to go ahead and take this one because I'm the number one MCE stan NA EU world. Matt's been coaching teams in CS for a while. Before that, he was IGLing. He's responsible for players like Grim, who's now on Liquid. His coaching tree, if you're looking at Valorant, players like Caboose came up under him. I mean, just a ton of different players, talented players came up playing with MCE either as an IGL or as a coach. He is fantastic at developing rosters, developing talent, scouting talent, and also maximizing the talent on rosters that no one thinks are going to do well. That is the hallmark of the MCE playbook. It does break my heart that he couldn't find a gig in Counter-Strike. He was trying to find something that didn't work out. He was part of the Chaos Esports roster that lost their org, and sorrow and sadness there. But his brain in Valorant, all of the toys that agent abilities give you, I know he's already having a field day. I was talking with him about it. He's coming up with arrow lineups for Sova. He just tweeted this morning saying, can they add a third and fourth bounce to Sova's arrow? This man's going to come up with some crazy stuff on the Gen G squad.
I think the coolest thing about it, though, is that they kept Blank on. Like,
Yes.
Blank, I feel like when you look at Gen G, you can look at the way that they play and the strats of the team, and the playbook was very small. It was very limited, and the same things were coming out quite regularly. It's quite easy to drop one coach for another one, but instead I think they focused on what Blank was good at, put him more in the GM role, and sort of obviously is going to help out MC when he needs it, right? It's not just, oh, I can't help you, coach. Of course he has experience. He just did it before you. So I think that synergy for those two is going to be really good. I think when we get on to talk about the challenges, close qualifiers as well, Gen G to get there were on fire. Sean, not just a Reign of One trick anymore, played a lot of Phoenix and Raze, I think, and unstoppable. That's what you want. So I think this momentum right now for Gen G is going to be needed and going to be a good thing for them to maybe get to Masters. Who knows?
Honestly, all I can see is the difference just from First Strike to now. In such a small window of time. I mean, I don't know anything about CSGO, so I don't know this guy from Valor, but to have seen the difference already, I am looking forward to seeing to what heights they can actually climb in the future. Because as I said, it's been a short time. With just a little bit more, I think we could see some really cool stuff out of Gen G. That's my take.
I will say this, to give you some context on MCE and how appealing he was to various teams. I know that Gen G wasn't the only team that was exploring adding him. I know that other orgs and some top orgs in the NA Valorant space were also looking at adding him. It was sort of he's picking his direction and what makes the most sense as a fit. I'm really excited. He again, in talking to him, he said that there's a lot that they need to install, and I asked him for sort of a mental timeline of when he thinks they'll be up to speed. Honestly, I don't expect them to be ready for this close qualifier that's coming up this week. It just hasn't been enough time with the roster to install a system, install a plan, really. But if we're looking like next qualifier cycle, this team could be really fierce. I'm expecting a lot from them. I'm really, really excited that MC.
There's only 3, right? Like 3 for Challenger.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
For Challenger
Okay,
1
so-
or for Masters 1 even. Let's not get into this.
Yeah,
It's
it's
Christ.
complicated. We'll get into the structure. Suffice it to say, they may not be ready this go around, but this team is going to be deadly. They just added Kusta.
Plenty of
He's got a lot of
opportunities,
talent.
yeah.
Kusta, by the way, was learning how Valorant worked like this week. Like he's still discovering things and learning things. Like he's so new to the game. Apparently he wants it to be that if you shoot a Sova dart out of the air, you kill Sova. That's his proposal for rule changes in the game, and I think that'd be hilarious, but not very practical. But suffice it to say, this roster super exciting now. I'm in on the Gen G train. There's talent. They're making moves. They're getting better. Sean, as you said, huge ceiling there. Now you've got a coach who can develop that talent and activate it. I think it will take them some time, but I am very excited about it. And now we're gonna get into some events. I'm gonna stop ranting about MCE because I can sing his praises all show long. Let's be real here. Love the guy. Big brain. Good dude. All around great person. Oh, I just pulled up his topic screen again. I love him so much. All right, we're on to Red Bull. Red Bull Homeground took place. It's pretty good. Had some fun games going through. G2 back on top, winning another event. This is the G2 we all know and some of us love. What do we think? Is this G2's return to form? G2 to G2ing? Are they better than ever now?
I mean, they played against Frenzy Go Kill, Omega Lol, and Nip. I mean, okay, and then they played against Liquid, who have looked on much better form than they have in a hellishly long time. I was really, really impressed watching that final game. But I think if we had G2 and Summon together in the bracket, maybe things turn out a little differently instead of Liquid Summon. But I mean, best of one, man. I'm not best of one. Single elim, like.
I was gonna say best of fives, the opposite of best of ones. As far different as you could get.
Single elim is always like a weird. I don't know. It's always in its own little bubble. Ninjas in Pajamas still not looking like what a top 3 team should look like, in my opinion. Not that I necessarily am saying that they are a top 3 team, but of course that is like the
I don't think anyone's accusing them of being a top 3 team.
But this is like that's the goal, right?
That's what they want to be. Yeah.
You want to be in like one kind of top 3. That's where you want to be, and that's where they ain't, and they haven't been for a while. So for G2 to have had them, Frenzy Go Kill, I repeat, Omega Lol, and Footballist in their bracket, I think it was a maybe not easy, but an easier trip to the final. And then, they played against Liquid, who, as I said, looked really freaking good. I was impressed.
Okay. Ryan, thoughts? G2 week run? What do we think?
I think this is a real big improvement from what we've seen in the past. Just the groundwork and foundations of the team look a lot stronger. The fact that you look at their Icebox comp, right? You've got Piff moving over to play Viper. You've got the Sage coming out in play as well. You've got all of the supporting players moving around and Zeke sort of fitting in. You couldn't do that with David P. He was too one-dimensional on his Breach and Sage that he wouldn't be able to sort of play around the team if they wanted to change things up to that level, right? So considering they brought in Zeke, it's the first tournament that he played. He looked okay. I don't think he really set the world on fire with this performance, but it was pretty decent. And he was playing a lot of Reyna as well, just sort of incorporate him into the team in some fashion. But I think that this is going to be looking good and improved in the future. I did think there were moments where they didn't look strong, but I think every team in this tournament had moments where they didn't look as convincing before. G2 was never an era team. They were never exceptionally good to the point that nobody could beat them. They just were really good in mid-rounds and being able to improvise when nobody else really could. So I don't think that G2 is going to necessarily run away with the Challengers Tour, especially with best of threes. Nip could have taken that one potentially at some point, right? So I do think that that caliber of team is a lot closer to each other. But this shows that G2 is still in pole position as the best team in Europe right now. But that is just going to change when we get into the Challengers Tour.
Now that you mention it, sorry, Mike, I do remember watching one particular game, and I can't remember. I think it was how they were utilizing a Sova dart on Ascent on A, and they used that to determine where whoever it was they were playing against were pushing up in heaven, and then use that to reposition themselves and get 2 kills from hell. And it was just a really good example of how they have started to actually work together as a team and bounce off of each other. And there's clearly like some planning going on. And I actually remember thinking, this is a very different G2 to who we saw 8 months ago, who seemed like the strongest pug team in EU.
Okay.
So I definitely think they've improved over the last few months. They're definitely looking more coordinated than they were before. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're going to be like the Uber champions forever.
All right, now I've got a question specifically for you, Sam. You knew this was coming.
Away.
It's in the outline. Guild. What the heck? This and literally in my outline I have Guild question mark. This question is for Sam in particular. As the number one self-avowed number one bonk stan, fan for life, they stink. They can't win anything. Sam, defend your team because they haven't won. I think. All right, I'm gonna pull up the score. It was like 13-6 and 13-4 or
9.
something. They got obliterated.
Okay, so I have 2 points, right?
Okay.
The first one is, to be fair, their first game was against a team that went 2-3 versus G2. Okay, but my second point being, I'm disappointed. I had so much faith, but even with Safe coming back into the team, the prodigal son returns and just doesn't show up, I guess. Like, man. I want to believe in Guild's potential, but I feel like they're kind of stagnating. Do we know if they have a coach?
Yeah, they got one with Safe coming back with Baba. I think
that's right.
the main thing is that Safe came back, and Safe, I would compare him to Sick for Sentinels, right? He's a very flexible player, very good at that. They stuck him on Killjoy. It could be a temporary thing, really, at this point, but looking back at that game, it was just super pub performance. Sam was right, playing up against TL was always going to be tough, but Yassine especially was awful. He had like 15 first deaths across like 40 rounds. Like he died first 40% of the time. Like that's ridiculous. Like that is just not a good showing for an entry. His utility, he was trying to clear sites that nobody was playing on because Team Liquid like to play retake and they're happy to give up that space. And Guild just didn't seem to respond. They didn't know how to play up against it, and it is going to be a difficult game with Liquid. And I think, as far as I know, Guild were saving stuff for VCT. But still, this is the polar opposite to Zeke's debut. Safe coming back and showing this team, Bonk actually signed under a roster. It completely fell flat. It was not a good look for them at all.
Yeah, strat saving for VCT only works if you win something in VCT. So I will put that out there. I will completely accept strat saving if they suddenly come out and they top 8 in this qualifier and they roll in the closed. I will eat my words. But for now, they stink. That's just really. They haven't had a good result since they signed. They had that one game where they beat G2 and it got DQ'd. They got thrown out. And then they haven't won anything since. And it is really disappointing as a roster. One other note I want to say about this tournament before we move on. AKM. Talk shit, get hit. He tweeted out about how Scream was, or he was on his stream talking about how Scream is all aim, no brain. And then they went and got 2-0 and knocked out a tournament immediately. And he was bottom of the board.
And on top of that, Monkey Business looked shit. I'm sorry, but they looked terrible. Like, it really felt like they had no idea what they were doing. So, yeah, I don't know where that smack talk came from. But, a little banter is always good here and there, but at least have something to back up your banter. Whew.
Now, this roster's rumored to be signing with OG, if I'm not mistaken. You think OG's maybe looking for an out in those contracts if they're already signed at this point, Ryan?
Oh, shit, look at the time.
Maybe. I mean, this Monkey Business team has gone from org to org to try and sell this team. They've been played together for quite some time, which is even more of a concern, but it's their first official performance, right? I think it's hard to judge based off that alone. I think that Tavik was... a lot of that team, other than AKM, were passably okay. They were fine. I think Element and Tavik had okay games. Unco looked fine. It was just AKM on that role just didn't seem to have much impact. So I don't think they're the same kind of team of anybody else in that tournament. They're not on that level, but you need to earn your spot, right? Like, you are given this position where your first showing is in an invited tournament over dozens of other teams that might deserve it more than you. And the first thing that you do is shit talk a pro player who arguably was the MVP of the tournament, might I add. You are just getting in this situation like the telltale meme of everybody disliked that. You've got to start at the bottom, monkey business. You have to earn your right to be even spoken about in this case. So button up, shut up, and work on it. I imagine these guys are maybe better than we saw this weekend, but until I see it, you should not be, throwing shit from glass houses, that kind of thing.
I think the best part of it is that this came from AKM, the person who became synonymous with the AKM blade because it took him north of 3 minutes to build up a Genji blade in an Overwatch League game. Basically, it took him an entire game to build up his ultimate. All right, even like,
and for those of you who don't watch Overwatch,
it was
that's
so.
bad.
It is horrific. It is. I mean, in some metas, you'll be building up an ultimate per fight. Okay, this was a very different meta, but that's not the point. It took him the whole game to build up his ultimate, and the phrase AKM blade was born, and you use this to flame every Genji in your plat games because they haven't built their ultimate yet. This is the man who became the face of that phrase, and he wants to shit talk Scream. Okay, dude. Okay.
So
we found out what summon means.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, go on.
Is it public?
It means Sage Ult My Nan Fortnite Club.
Sage Alt My Nan Fortnite Club. Okay.
A football club as well.
Oh, football club, okay.
I think somebody guessed that. I think somebody mentioned that in Sideshow's stream or something, because I've heard that before.
What?
Perfect.
That is awful.
Horrifying. All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna go. Not what I heard from someone in chat. Can you put what you heard in chat without getting banned by the bot? Let's find out. We're gonna hop on over and we're gonna talk about the VCT Open Qualifier here. We're starting to get into the juicy stuff. This took place last week. We're gonna pull up the bracket here. This is just the top 8. Oh no, actually these are highlights. Never mind. We'll talk about the highlights while we go through it. There were some spicy games. Holy upset, Batman. I mean, ooh. 100 Thieves, the champions of First Strike, out of the tournament. TSM, out of the tournament. T1, out of the tournament. Dignitas, out of the tournament. Upset City going on. Dignitas a little less so than the other 3. Upset City going on. Let's get into this. Let's talk about it. Ryan, talk about these upsets to me.
I mean, the main one is going to be that 100 Thieves performance. There are a lot of mitigating circumstances, to be fair, like Silence coming in as a sub whilst Nitro, congratulations to him, has his first child and is sorting all of that stuff out. A lot of people, piling on Dicey to an extent as well. This game wasn't streamed, so we don't... Welcome to Europe, right, guys? Like, right. This game wasn't streamed, so we don't know how this went down, but they lost to Carpe Noctem, who... I got to see a little bit of in the Winter Championships for Nerd Street Gamers, and they bottomed out completely. I think they were the worst performing team in there. And you've got to bear in mind that Team 2D was in this tournament, and they put up a better showing in this team. So you can't really give too much... Well, you give all of the credit to Carpe Noctem here, but this isn't a team that's on the up. It's not an X set. It's not living to surprise. It is just a decent, okay, tier 3 team at this point, right? So 100 Thieves losing this is really not a good look. Luckily, there's plenty of other opportunities to qualify, but it just goes to show that even in a best of 3, so it's not like they were upset in just one map. They lost 2, and they lost the second one. Or they lost both pretty closely. I was thinking of something else where they lost like 13-3 or something ridiculous. Like they got hammered. I think that was... who would that have been? We'll probably talk about them in a second. I'll click in a second. But they were relatively close games, but still just not a good performance for 100 Thieves. You should expect better for them, even with all those mitigating circumstances. This should not be happening. Just full stop, should not be happening.
Absolutely. Sam, thoughts?
Man, I had so much fun going through the bracket. Obviously, with it being in like NA time, it was near impossible for me to watch the games live because unfortunately I have an actual day job, so sleep is a requirement.
Gross.
But I had a lot of fun waking up the next morning and going through the bracket. Like, what? When I saw 100 Thieves got knocked out, I was mind blown because I barely knew who Carpe Noctem was. I know who... Like, the coach at the time, he's recently been released. I think he's joined another team, but I know the coach who was coaching them at the time. I was like, yo, congrats, dude, that's huge. And then Dignitas NRG, unexpected. There was something else that kind of threw me off. Luminosity showed up. I was really impressed. I think they were one of the teams that we kind of highlighted last week as potentially being an upset team. I was impressed. Unfortunately, they didn't do much against Envy, which was quite sad. And then, of course, there was Xset, who, like, just completely obliterated TSM. I was not expecting that. Just put it like that.
Very exciting, that one.
Bro, so much fun. So much fun. And then Sentinels, Sentinels dropping to Immortals! Who the hell predicted that? Tell me right now, who predicted Immortals beating Sentinels? I can't even English anymore. If you predicted Immortals beating Sentinels, I will buy you a World of Warcraft mount.
To be honest, I don't think I didn't predict that specific matchup, but I did expect Sentinels to lose once they got past the seeding, the mark off.
Yeah, because it's seeding, and
because they troll.
It doesn't matter at all.
That is the question. Like, should we put any stock in the seeding results? We've got our top 8. Top 8, just to clarify, is Immortals, Envy, Sentinels, NRG, Gen.G, Xset, Luminosity, and Box. Those are the teams moving through to the closed qualifier. Past that, every result is for seeding. Do we care? These teams, I'm gonna be honest. Here's my question: is there an easy matchup here? I don't think so. I think Andbox is probably the only team you could argue is an easy matchup. So, does seeding matter if most matchups are going to be difficult? That's my question to you, Ryan. Ryan, take this one.
It's a loaded question. The lucky side of it is that it is double elimination. Mm-hmm. So even if these teams lose in these upper quarterfinal matches, there is a chance to come back and earn that space to be the top 4 of challengers, of at least the first challengers. Again, let's not get into the details of that because we'll be here all day, but I really don't think so. You've got Envy making the grand final of the open qualifiers. They won the first closed qualifiers for First Strike, and they went out in the semis disappointingly against, it would be TSM. And it goes to show that these games, once they get into seeded, just do not matter at all. They have no stock other than potentially an easier matchup. But when you look at these teams and the games that we're actually getting, you've got Immortals versus Xset. Both teams are certainly on the up. NRG, Gen.G, they played off against each other before, but I think with MCE potentially coming into the roster for Gen.G, it sort of leans it more in their direction. Envy Unbox, like you kind of mentioned, Envy should have this one in the bag. And Sentinels LG, you've got the Nerd Street Gamers Winter Championship Finals as the first quarterfinal game for these two teams. It's going to be super awkward. It's just you have to look through the open qualifier part, see who beat who. Like you've got NRG Esports kind of getting in just from beating Dignitas. You've got Xset beating TSM. That's great momentum to go into this stage. So really, I don't think teams hide strats when they get to these seeding matches, but the foot comes off the pedal a little bit. Why show too much? Why even try in some cases when you look at how Sentinels seem to not really care as much in something like this, and yet they still made it to the semifinals of First Strike and lost it in fair enough reasons considering the stuff going on with Shazam. Like, anything could happen past this point.
My question is, when do we stop making excuses? Like, there's always something. Okay, so the Shazam thing, that is, like, fair enough. What about Winter Championships? What was their, excuse then? And now we come into VCT. Ooh, it's a seeding match. No, bullshit. Sentinels are on a slippery slope, okay? And as someone who has been one of their biggest fans and advocates for months and months and months, I will be the first to say it. Like, they are not where they were 6 to 8 months ago. And at some point, we've got to stop saying, oh, but it's just this kind of a match. Oh, but it wasn't important. Oh, but they don't really care about this bullshit. I'm sorry, I'm calling it. Like, call a spade a spade. They're just not playing how they should be. I'm going to say the exact same thing for TSM. And I mean, for them, they didn't even make it to seeding bracket or whatever. They got knocked out. This is a team who, correct me if I'm wrong, have not gone through the same kind of shit that TSM and Sentinels have gone through. Sentinels having the stuff with Shazam. Oh, sorry, not TSM, Nitro. And 100 Thieves. And then 100 Thieves losing Nitro for a little bit because of, family responsibility and stuff. TSM haven't had stuff like that. TSM are just not maintaining. I won't say they're becoming bad, but they're not maintaining while everyone else is starting to surpass them. We're looking at the Immortals, the Gen Gs, the NRGs, the Envies, the Exits, the teams that are absolutely excelling right now, and everyone else is falling to the wayside. Cut the crap. No more excuses. These teams need to pull their socks up.
I think one of the really cool things that we've seen as a storyline leading up to this champion story that's been crystallized in this open qualifier is teams like Xset, Luminosity, and Immortals who've been playing everything they can get their hands on. They've participated in every open tournament, every open qualifier, every NSG event, opens, 5Ks, 10Ks, championship, whatever. They've been playing everything. And we've seen them get better and better and better and go from like, well, this is a sneaky upset team to like, no, these guys are just good. These guys are just good. We're going to be talking about them in matchups right now. Yeah, I don't know. This one's pretty fascinating. I will say one thing when it comes to mentality with the seeding games, just to give some context. Sunday, I was casting a CSGO Cash Cup, and Crashy's popped up in my chat because some of his friends were on the team. It was like his old, not really his old roster, but a lot of the pieces of one of his old rosters. And he's cheering them on, and someone in chat just goes, Crashies, aren't you playing a grand final in an hour? He goes, for seeding. So
it's just, I don't disagree with everything you said about Sentinels. They've been lacking, but I just think that seeding matches just don't have enough stock to them. And I think you see both sides of the spectrum. It's not even that Sentinels, lose out against Gen G 2-0 in the Nerd Street First Strike quals. They still get to the semi-final. They still beat these teams to get there. But you also have Envy, who, like I mentioned before, won out the seeding of the closed qualifiers for one of them, got to the semi-final. Cloud9 won the UMG qualifiers completely. They came first place. They didn't even qualify for First Strike based off the seeding game. So it's so difficult to take this and, specifically from my perspective, I mean as Immortals are now the best team in North America. Are they crap? Like, come on, like they are so much better than they were. I love what they've done with this team, but you can't tell me based on the fact that they beat Envy in a game that feels like it didn't matter, that they can go on and then win the tournament. What I mean is the Sentinels usually are a team that really start to ramp things up when it matters. You look at the Envy game and the Nerd Street Gamers Winter Championship. They showed that. They elevated their performance, and whilst they did look streaky at best during that tournament, they still had opportunities, much like G2 did in Red Bull, where they show us what they're made of. And Luminosity, their whole play style, much like Heretics in First Strike, I feel, they completely surprised the competition, won out that tournament, but that's not going to last forever. People like to look at the enemies, they like to look at what they do to anti-strat them and go from there. So I feel like when you get into the main event, nothing is set up. You can't look at this and go, Immortals should be winning this event because they won the seeding games. It doesn't work that way. Some teams might be trying a lot harder than others, but the most important thing is there's more real out there for these teams, and there's a lot of planning going on behind the scenes to try and beat the others at their own game.
Well, I'm about to ask you what's going to happen in terms of the matchups, because it's time for us to talk about the big event, about what's happening this week. We're going to talk about the Valor Champions Tour closed qualifier. This is a it's a $50,000 tournament. $20,000 for first place. Big cash prize early on, and the top four make it through to the next closed qualifier, which will get you into the big event. We're not going to get into the full format, but suffice it to say, top four move on and get a lot of cash as well. First place is 20K. Second place, I think, is 10. Then it's like 7, 5, and then 1, 1. Something along those lines. Lots of money on the line, lots of prestige. Really stacked matchups here. Really stacked matchups. I'm going to pull up the bracket right here. We've got our first round matchups. It is a double elimination tournament, so you can look at the bracket here. We're going to go through matchup by matchup and break down, make predictions, and talk about what we expect to see. First up is Immortals Xset. To me, I think this is one of the most interesting matchups of the first round. Sam, start us off here.
Well, it's the epic rematch, right? They played each other in the closed. Immortals come out on top 2-0. First map's dominant, 13-4. Second map's closer, 13-10. So, like, my gut tells me, all right, cool, Immortals take it again. But at the same time, again, it's the epic grudge match. So do Xset go home? Do they watch the VODs? Do they do their homework? Do they come back harder, better, stronger, faster? I'm kind of leaning towards Immortals, to be honest. I think that, again, there's a lot of potential here for Xset, but Immortals have been impressing me. And I think this is the one they take.
Ryan?
I feel that this is a little bit more straightforward than some of the other games. I think that Immortals should have the advantage, not because of the seeding game, because we've kind of highlighted that, but I feel Xset are a team that gets to this point, has a few surprising results and looks good. But when you really get into the business end of a group stage, like the GSL's group stages from Nerd Street, the Winter Championship, they didn't even get to the playoffs in that event, and they were looking to be one of the better teams, right? So I feel like based off that, they get to a certain point, and they did it in First Strike 2, where they get to a part of the event like this, the main area, and they fall flat. I could see them going out almost instantly in some cases because they don't really perform on the main event stage. Whereas Immortals, you could say the same for them. We haven't seen enough of this new roster to really know how far it can go. But Chemicals has really come into this roster. It looks much more stronger. You can sort of tell that JC Stanley's been freed up a little bit as well on Neoma now that he doesn't have to IGL anymore, because I think Nature's doing that now. You've got Packing 10 moving over full time now because of all of the Valiant stuff, which we won't get into. It just feels like Immortals are now starting to go, all right, we've toyed around with stuff. We've sold some good players. We made a profit. Now VCT's here, we actually want to make a statement. So I think that Immortals can not only be winning this matchup, but I think considering you're looking at this side of the bracket, I think they're the first team that qualifies for the main event, the main Masters, whatever it is. They're one of the top 4 in this tournament, I think.
I'm gonna play both sides here a little bit. First, I'm gonna give my kudos to Immortals because you're absolutely right. First of all, Immortal scouting department deserves another raise. Give them another raise. How do they keep doing this? They keep losing players, cutting players, selling players, and then bringing in new names who have not really looked good anywhere else, or have looked good, but like not like this. Bring them into the roster. Chemicals looks insane. Nature takes over the calling, and in what, 2 weeks that he's been with the team, they look fantastic, and you know, win the qualifier. Immortals look nuts right now. Even whatever stock you want to put into the seeding games, they look like one of the best teams in this competition. And that is, again, a huge credit to the scouting department. And it just has to be said again. Huge credit to the scouting department. Xset, though. All right. Xset, to me, are like an anime protagonist. Every time they lose or get beat down, the next tournament they show up in, they're better than before. It's like level scaling, power scaling in an anime, right? Every time we see them, they're stronger. They're throwing spirit bombs. They're popping around, teleporting. They just get better and better. Every time I think I found the cap on this team, or I think I know how they're going to play in a tournament, they surprise me and they come back stronger. That's why I think this is going to be a more interesting matchup, because I think that in classic, anime storyline style, yes, they just got beat down by Immortals, but now, as you said, it's the grudge match. They're going to come back. They're going to have done their homework. They know about this matchup. It's where we're going to see some spice in. So I think this one's going to have some sparks fly. We'll move on to the next matchup here. We're gonna talk about it's NRG Genji. NRG Genji. Both teams with a lot of Counter-Strike talent, coaching involved. NRG has been looking really good lately. Genji just added MCE and are looking improved. They've got the talent. Where do we think this one's going? I'm not sure. Ryan, start us out here.
Yeah, this is one of the more contentious ones, really, because NRG have been performing super well. These teams literally matched up in the seeding matches as well, so there's no difference there at all for these two teams. It was NRG that won out that one 2-0, 13-8 and 13-4, so Haven especially was super good from NRG. But I do think that you look at individual performances. Again, I mentioned Sean beforehand. I think that he could really sort of tear it up at this point. And we sort of mentioned MC before. It's not going to be an instant fix to anything right now. But I do feel that potentially could come in and just, on the fly be like, oh, maybe we should default this way a little bit more. We should stop 5 stacking 5 people on the site in a post plant. We should try and spread out a little bit. I think the small adjustments for Genji could actually make a big difference this early in the tournament. So I still fancy NRG to win this one because they have been looking so much better after each performance. And I think they're still riding the high of beating Sentinels in the Winter Championship. So it is just for them about consistency. But Genji has the potential to turn it on. But I think way too much stock goes into how Sean plays in particular, because that has been Gen G for the past 3 months. Is Sean in the server? Yes, then they win. If he isn't, if he's asleep, it doesn't work out for Gen G at all.
Sam?
I would probably echo that sentiment for the most part. I think that given how fairly dominant the NRG win over Gen G looked in the Open, which was a week ago, like how much are we expecting a team to improve in a week? I think that Gen G are definitely on the up and up. They're already looking way better than they did last year, but I don't know that it's enough to overtake NRG just yet. I think it'll potentially be a closer series than what we saw last week, maybe a closer scoreline, maybe even a 2-1. But I don't see Gen G taking the win. I have less
Sean
to say about
versus
it than Ryan,
Som.
but that's it.
Sean versus Som is such a good matchup, though.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that one.
It's going to be a fun series to watch. I'm going to echo my thoughts when I was talking about MCE being added to the team. I think they just need more time. I think that this go around, they were very pleased to make top 8 in the Open. I think that it'll probably be next run where we start to see them as they're supposed to be. I think there's actually a lot of mirrored trajectories between these two teams, because this was NRG, 2 months ago, a month and a half, 2 months ago, where we were like, well, they need more time. They're going to get better. They need more time. And they did. They got a lot better. I think Gen G is, despite the fact that Gen G's been in the game a lot longer, because they've made some changes, because they've now brought MCE in, they're bringing Kusta up to speed on how to play Valorant. I think they're sort of back to square one and progressing along the board, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think they'll get there. I just don't think it'll happen here. I think it's possible they make a run through the lower bracket, but I would be surprised if they made top 4 out of this one. Next matchup, Envy and Box. For my money, I think this one's pretty straightforward. Do you all disagree with me? Sam, start us out here.
Envy. I feel like
You don't disagree with me, okay.
I'm sorry. Like, I had such high hopes for Anbox, man. They came out the gate swinging, guns blazing. They just they looked so good, and then it all went. It's like a GME stocks right now. It was like a really good start, and now it's not looking too great. So I don't see them taking this. I don't see them. I'm not even sure I see them qualifying. Past beyond the top 4 or whatever. Don't know, man. I just don't see it. They need to do more to impress me.
Ryan,
I
thoughts?
mean, yeah, so they've lost to Sentinels twice recently. One was in the Nerd Street Gamers Winter Championship. The other was in a seeding match. So again, we won't look at that too much. I think that the win over T1 needs a bit more credit. It's hard to say, though, however, because you've got Brax moving over to a different role. There's still an adjustment period for T1. I think the problem also is just that Envy are such a much more complete roster. Their all-round play across various maps is much stronger. We're seeing Crashies move to the sky a little bit more, and I think that's one thing that we failed to mention from EU is that Soulcast was exceptional on... he didn't rely on trying to get better at Sova for Team Liquid. He actually started playing more Sky, and it caught a lot of teams out, and it's a big curveball, and it's an agent that teams are going to start to use more now because of how that utility can be better formed in the server. People are starting to realize how good she can be. And I think Crashies is the main proprietor for that in North America currently. And I think because of that, Envy just looked like the most well-rounded team in here. The only game that they've lost recently was the quarterfinal in the Winter Champs against Sentinels, which was super close, and Sentinels needed to have absolute lifer rounds in order to try and win it. So I think that Envy, much like Immortals, are looking to be going on forward, but that's again bearing in mind that they were the 2 finalist teams for the seeding matches, and off previous results, they're the ones that typically fall apart a little bit, funnily enough.
I think I agree with you. The point about Sky is an excellent one. I think we're going to see just more and more and more and more Sky steadily ramped up. Funnily, I don't think it's going to happen with Yoru. I think we'll see Yoru pulled out a bit here and there, but I really don't think Yoru is going to be a consistent presence. But Sky, I'm amazed, hasn't been in more rosters, more matchups, more consistently. She's just... There's so much potential out of that utility set. And we're starting to see it. So we're all kind of in the Envy camp. I'm going to go ahead and say 2-1 because I do love my boys on Inbox. Seb, I'm a big Seb fan over here. I think they've absolutely got potential. I think it's a rough draw to come up against Envy this early on. They are.
Yeah.
When I was talking about does seeding matter, I think Envy's the one team where if I was looking at it, I'd be like, I don't want to play them. Anyone else? Anyone else? But you know me, I'm the number one Envy fan. So there's definitely some bias inherent in that. We are going to talk about the last matchup here, though. We got one more to talk about. It's Sentinel's Luminosity. This one I'm very curious about because I think this is much more controversial. Ryan, start us out here.
So there's a lot of history between these two teams now because Luminosity beat Sentinels in the final of that Winter Championship tournament. The way that they play, typically a Proto and Thief, just the high contact, not using any utility, not giving away your position, just literally holding
Click
W
heads.
onto a site and just finding somebody that wasn't expecting a fight just then. It was key for Luminosity to win that game, but I don't think it has the legs to do it a second time. I think the Sentinels are going to have their feathers ruffled after that loss. I think they were going to be tilted to the point that they go into the server, work on some of the issues that they've had. It wasn't a complete performance as well, bear in mind that they didn't get to the finals of seeding, but you always have to say that Sentinels are a team that never look good in seeding matches because they seem to not really care for them much, but they always seem to have a convincing response afterwards. You know, we saw it in the Nerd Street Gamers First Strike tournament where they lost 2-0 to Gen.G. We got to the main part of those qualifiers. They breezed through it. Absolutely no problem at all. So I'm not saying that Sentinels don't have their problems. They do. But this is why they should be still considered the top team. It's how they deal with this performance. If they win it, then great. They've really got over that hurdle. If they don't, that's a lot more pressure onto them. They have to get to the top 4 through the losers bracket, and that's going to be super interesting to see if that happens, but I don't think it will. I think Sentinels are just going to take it.
Sam?
I'm at a point now where I'm just like, who knows?
Yeah, with these two,
shows up, could go either way. I would like to see Sentinels take it because at heart I'm still a Sentinels fan. It is what it is. And I think that they will, all things considered. But I don't want to count out Luminosity just yet. We did see them win the Winter Champions. They did a fantastic job there. They did really well in the Open Qualifiers as well. So I think they put up a really solid fight. And I think it goes to a 2-1. And if I absolutely have to pick a team to win, because Mike doesn't let me sit on the fence.
Nope.
I'm going to go with Sentinels.
That's why this is the part that gets you paid. It's making the hard calls. All right, well, I'm going to go counter to both of you. Luminosity all the way, baby. My boy Alex Protopappas is going to be clicking some heads. That's a Proto if you couldn't put that one together. Thief, going to be stealing hearts, stealing minds. I mean, look, I just have so much faith in this Luminosity team right now. I think they're hot at the right time. I think they've got momentum coming in at the right time, and I think they've hit that point where they believe in themselves to such a degree that they can make that play style of getting super aggressive contacty plays work. The trick to that is you can literally never doubt your aim. You have to know in your mind that you're better than everyone else in the server, whether it's true or not. And I think right now Luminosity are in that headspace where they feel that way when they're in the server, right? They've beaten these guys before. This team has bled. I don't know. I'm on the Luminosity train. I think it'll be a 2-1, but I'm taking Luminosity to win this.
I mean, the only issue I have with that mindset is it reminds me of that Renegades tournament before First Strike that we saw Anbox win. We saw the shot up version of Immortals come in and do quite a lot. We saw those kind of teams coming in and, you know, beating the likes of Cloud9, T1, and we're sort of going, oh, Anbox might be able to win First Strike. Look how that ended up. It just didn't really solidify in that fashion. And I think it's the same for LG. Whilst they won the Winter Championship event, it was a good look. No team, if we're looking at the short history of Valorant here at least, has been able to take that form from a smaller tournament where they had a surprise win into a main event. It just hasn't happened, and I don't think it's going to happen here either.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to ask for some big predictions now. We're going to pull back up the bracket. We're going to look at the bracket here, just to remind folks what happens. The key here is teams need to make it. And what they need to make it to is they need to make it either to the end of the winner's bracket or the second to last match in the lower bracket. I mean, you could see basically it's when 4 teams are still left in the bracket. It's that third rung in the respective sides. That's where they need to make it through to the next close qualifier. top 4 teams will advance. Obviously, you want to win the grand prize. It's 20K. That's a little bit of scratch, a little bit of change.
It's nice.
A little bit of do, re, mi, so to speak. But we need the top 4. So I'm going to ask for 2 predictions here. I want your top 4, and I want your winner. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Either of you want to start out, or should I give this a minute to ruminate, to puzzle through?
So I could give you 2 easily with Immortals and Envy. I think Immortals comes through to the upper final. Have we still got the graphic on screen by chance?
We do have the graphic on
Okay,
screen.
so Immortals upper final. They beat X8. They beat probably NRG.
Okay.
They're the team that goes through to the upper final. The other team, I think, is Sentinels. It could be Envy. I think Envy versus Sentinels rematch should be a really good one. And I think it's very much dependent on who bans what maps. So I think that you have Immortals in there. I think you have maybe Sentinels coming through to the upper final. I think Envy makes it to be the 3rd team that qualifies. The 4th.
You're watching Ryan's thought process in action right here, folks. This is a rare window into the mind of.
So it really depends on where these teams get seeded in the lower bracket, because sometimes it's like, let's say Luminosity lose, they get put onto the bottom game of lower round 1, but they might switch it up to make sure that teams get to play the other teams on the other side of the bracket, right? So it depends on how that's done overall. I don't have any knowledge on how that's done, but
I believe the way it'll work is, I'm not 100% sure on this, but so top bracket, loser of that will play loser of bottom bracket, is I believe how this will work if you're visualizing it, right?
So it's like switcheroos.
Yeah.
I think in that case,
sides.
yeah, I think in that case, and I don't know if this is going to work, because again, it depends on this. And in one sense, if I'm wrong about how these brackets work, or if you're wrong with what you just said, Mike, this is statistically impossible. But I think it would be Immortals, Sentinels, Envy, and LG.
I can see that. Sam, thoughts?
But it depends if Luminosity gets put onto the other bracket against NRG and Genji and stuff, because I do think LG is a better team than Xset, NRG, and Genji on the top bracket.
Interesting. Okay,
it's stacked, though. It's so stacked.
It really is. So much fun.
So again,
I'm excited to watch this.
Like, I don't have a brain for permutations, so again, I don't know how possible this is. But I do echo Ryan's sentiments of Sentinels, Immortals, Envy. And I know that, Mike, you will find that very boring, but, like, it is what it is. For my 4th team, see, my toss-up is between Xset and Luminosity. And
I mean, there's history between these 2 teams again. Like, they've played each other, and it's funny because Xset used to just dump on LG. Yeah. They beat them like 13-2 on Haven, but then LG got better as that tournament went on and then won that matchup. So really, I realize I'm out of camera because I've been focusing on this too much. That matchup could legit go either way, because both teams have been able to take series off each other recently as well. This isn't like we're talking about ignition events here. It's a couple of weeks ago.
No, you want me to give
I
you
think
my top
I'm
4?
going to give my 4th spot to Xset.
Okay, give it to Xset.
Just because I feel like they've had such a good resurgence recently. And they smacked TSM around. So that gives them a big old thumbs up in my book.
All right, I'm gonna talk about it now. I'm gonna lay down mine. Envy.
Okay.
That's my first one. I think they'll make it through the top. I think Immortals will as well. I don't disagree with you there. But I think Luminosity is beating Sentinels in the first matchup. So I think Luminosity is going to make it in. And then I think that 4th team is gonna be NRG. That's who I'm gonna give it to. I think.
You think Sentinels are not going to qualify?
I don't think Sentinels are going to qualify through the top 4.
That is Mike's hot take.
That's my hot take of the day. That's what I'm going to put down. I think Sentinels are going to get humbled here. I think that they're not going to make it through to the top 4. It's bold. Is it likely? Perhaps not. They are the last of the. They and Envy are the last of the quote unquote big teams in this, right? Who you would have put as the big teams a month ago, 2 months ago. I think it's the new world order. I think it's the day of Luminosities and Immortals and your NRGs and your Xsets. Even though I'm not predicting Xset to go through, I think it's a new world order, baby. I don't think Sentinels are making it.
See, I kind of hope you're right. I do hope that they get humbled, or I hope that they win, right? They're the only two things that I want out of the Sentinels
One
team.
Direction,
I want them to
yeah.
win the final. I want them to shut people up when it comes to like the seeding matches, I suppose, and to sort of throw that narrative away. With any luck, seeding parts, I mean, you have got money on the line for this, which is fair enough. So another reason for Sentinels to go all of the way, really. I think you'd be pretty annoyed at the team if you're from Sentinel's perspective and you feel like your team is sandbagging because they feel like it's a seeding match when there's legit money on the line. I would be furious if my team did that, for example. But I do think that they either need to win it to prove everybody wrong or they need to bomb out. And then everybody sort of realizes that this team is in trouble and Sentinels does something about it. It feels like I'm watching OG2, where it's a team that don't look like the best team in the region. There's a lot of competition, yet they still just keep winning. And it's really frustrating to watch because you often feel like they don't deserve it. So I want to see either Sentinels deserve to be in a position that they're in by playing some really good Valorant that we know that they can play, or they get humbled by a team that is on the up. They're the only two things I hope for. If they go in and have a lukewarm performance but still qualify, it's just going to be more of the same. So they need to sort of show up a little bit more.
Well, now I'm going to actually ask you both to put your predictions where your mouth is, so to speak. Doesn't really work with money unless I make you put cash in, which I don't think I'm allowed to do. Who's going to win the thing? Who's going to win the tournament? Are you saying Sentinels, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm saying it because I hope they do.
Okay. Sentinels to win it from Ryan. Sam?
I want Sentinels to win. I think it's likely that they win, but
what's your
I'm
prediction?
gonna put my weight behind Envy.
Okay. That's a weird way to predict. I think Sentinels is gonna win, but I'll predict Envy. Sounded like me.
It's more along the lines of like, I think it's really likely. Like there's like a 90% chance, right? Like I don't think 100% they're going to. You know, I'm not sure. I just think it's possible. But I'm gonna put my weight behind Envy. I think that they've been looking really good. They've been getting stronger and stronger, and I kind of want to see them topple the Giants. And as Ryan said, like Sentinels kind of need a humbling moment. G2 do as well, which I'm still waiting for. But I'm hoping this will be the Sentinels one.
I'm taking Envy all the way. Top one. Making it, winning it. No doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind. I think they've continued to get better. I think they're aware of some of their limitations and they've continued to work at it. And I think they're one of the teams that, despite being in that sort of top echelon, they haven't been content with that, right? They want to be the top team and they've been working at it. They've been grinding away at it. They've been chipping away at the stone, taking their game seriously. You never really hear anything about them apart from when they're playing. They're quieter, but they're going to keep winning. That's what I'm about. That's what I see. So I'm taking the Envy side of things. I think Envy take it. I think Envy are going to be your closed qualifier champions and take home that 20K prize. That's what I'm saying right there. I think that is going to wrap up our show here. Now, if you're tuning in live on the Twitch stream, the games will be starting tomorrow night. If you're watching this as it's pre-recorded and run before the show, they'll be starting right after this show. So definitely be there to tune in. If you enjoyed this show, tune in every week at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Nerd Street Gamers Twitch. Follow the Nerd Street Gamers Twitch here. Follow our Twitters. You can find them down below our faces, right down there. Follow those. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Press 4 to Defuse, and good luck to all the teams in the closed qualifier. Bye-bye, everyone.